Election Day 2023 is right around the corner. So what are some of the choices on the ballots in our area? And how important is it that you vote? That's next on WNIN Newsmakers. Welcome to WNIN Newsmakers. I'm April Nading. Let's learn a little bit about voting. Here in Indiana, Evansville is choosing most of its executive branch and local government. And in Kentucky, they're picking a governor. Joining us to discuss the importance of participating in our elections is Dr. Matthew Henke, political science professor at USI. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, April. It's nice to meet you. Thank you.
We'll just jump right in. Why is it important for people to vote?
Voting is one of the easiest forms of political participation. We can track it. We know that this is how someone participates in the process, that they make a conscious decision to vote for representatives that will essentially represent their interests in any levels of local government. It's the perfect measure of how we understand participation in our political process, but it's not the only one.
But it seems like a lot of people ask, does it really matter? Does their vote really matter? Does it really count?
I mean, the votes, in terms of the integrity of votes, there's been a minuscule amount of things that we would consider to be fraud, but this is one way you get to participate that actually results in an outcome of a winner or a loser. Are there other ways of being civically engaged and participating? Sure, you can go and participate in rallies, you volunteer, do all these other things, but this is one measure that your vote and you submitting your will, this is what your conscious will to the government body politic to represent you. This is a perfect opportunity, and it's a relatively easy opportunity. And sometimes our institutions or even the people themselves make it more difficult. Yeah.
And I think there's that old adage of you can't complain about the government if you're not going to vote.
Right.
And I think that's true.
Yeah, there's some elements to that. You can participate in other things, and we see a lot of energy among younger generations participating in political rallies, having their voice heard. But if it doesn't translate into that vote, it matters. Because if you think of the biggest currency in politics is votes. That's what the politicians respond to. They're political entrepreneurs in a way. So this is what they go. They have to seek out folks that will support their position and their candidacy. And they do that. And oftentimes the priorities and the positions and platforms that the candidates have are based upon who votes. And we see voting very strong in the demographics of 50 and above. The older generation turn out to vote. And that results in a lot of the priorities of the politicians. So you see a disconnect where there may be a lot of young people who aren't necessarily voting in greater percentages as their older counterparts. Even if there is this engagement and participation, they're not going to vote. And then they feel disconnected when some of the issues that matter to them aren't at the forefront are being addressed at the forefront of the agenda of either the politician or the local, state, and federal government as a whole.
What do you think's happened that so many, isn't that the trend though, that younger people aren't voting?
There are many reasons why people vote. There's individual personal reasons. They feel a sense of attachment to their country, civic pride, in terms of individual self-worth, feeling like, okay, I'm going to be participating in something. And that's, yeah, people do vote because their vote matters. But there's also the social aspects of it. People are socialized into this is what you do. And this is how you behave in our system by going to vote. And it's just getting out the vote is such an important thing. And sometimes we make the mark and sometimes we don't, even in pivotal presidential elections.
Do you think that there are good measures? Nothing is foolproof.
Right.
But overall, as a general rule, do we have things in place to help prevent voter fraud?
We do. We have a lot of systems in place. Indiana and then Kentucky have done good jobs of tamping out any kind of voting irregularities. If you see them, they are stamped that they're addressed by the local and the state secretaries of state. Some of the allegations of fraud, maybe they've been minuscule, but when we talk about sort of people's confidence in the institutions, even some of those doubts, even some little instances of these irregularities may cast some doubt, and that can affect turnout.
What are some of the local participation rates that you've noticed?
They're very small. The primary that we had in May was about 5%, and even some pivotal mayoral elections have been 15 to 20%. So if you think about 120,000 people in Evansville, and you look at the percentage of those that are eligible voters, you get essentially 1/6 of that. And that is small for a very pivotal election that is going to chart the course of leadership for the next 4 years, or potentially even longer if that person's in office and seeks re-election. So it's low. We've even seen it low in presidential elections. The 2016 election was 53% of the vote.
Why do you think it's so low in this area? You may not have an exact answer, but just theories.
A lot of it has to do with, it goes back there's political scientists have talked about political culture, and we live in a political culture in the Midwest where we value individualism. And so if there's an individualness to kind of how we do things, there might be less pivoting and reliance on government. So people are not going to always seek government for everything. But that might be a mindset in terms of how they utilize services, but that may also extrapolate a little bit into their participation. They're not as entrenched in the public square, if you will, in terms of participating in political life. Indiana had one of the lowest turnout rates. Either it was, I believe it might have been 2016, but certainly in the last couple of years, to have one of the lowest turnout rates.
I was going to say, what do we need to do to try to improve that situation in Indiana?
A lot of it is just making sure that people are informed that this is a big part of citizenship. It's not the only part of citizenship, but this is extremely important, that you have a fundamental say in the outcome in setting the future course of events for the leaders that you're going to pick. And your vote does matter. Your vote has an impact. Maybe it seems like I know we hear this as can one vote make a difference? Yes, it can, because in totality, it adds up to enough of a will that could make the difference between one candidate winning and one candidate losing. And a lot of it has to do with education, civic education that we have in the K-12 level. As a political science professor, yes, we emphasize this as an important part of getting a liberal arts education, is understanding our civic and political processes, understand how government works, understand how our institutions work, et cetera.
And some people just don't want to make the effort. And I think there's a little bit of a decline. You don't hear about that on social media, and which is where a lot of people are getting their information.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with there's sometimes when people ask what we vote, a lot of us, and Robert Putnam was this political scientist at Harvard who wrote an important piece called Bowling Alone. He touched upon the importance of social capital, that participating and being civically engaged in voting helps strengthen the social capital. And that's the networks and the relationships that individuals and groups have with each other, and the benefits that derive from those relationships. And so areas that have high levels of this social capital, you'll see high levels of participation. So another way of saying it is, if you feel disconnected or disengaged with your community, are you going to want to participate in voting? And so that's another layer.
Okay, well, this was some good rah-rah for people to go out and vote.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Here to talk about elections in Vanderburgh County is County Clerk Carla Hayden. Thanks so much for being here. So tell me about what kind of things are on the ballot in Vanderburgh County.
In Vanderburgh County, it's going to be only the city of Evansville, which means only the residents that are registered in the city of Evans will be able to vote.
Okay.
And those offices will be mayor, city clerk, and the city council seats, both in the wards and at large.
So if is it okay to go in and just vote on one or two things? Do you have to vote on everything?
It is. You absolutely may only vote for one office. If there's only one thing that you care about, only one person that you're wanting to vote for, you absolutely may go in, vote that, and nothing else. It's considered an undervote for our counting purposes, but it is absolutely okay to do that.
What, is there a specific polling place that voters need to go to? I mean, like based on where their residence is or anything?
Vanderbilt County is a vote center county, which means that you may go to any voting location that is open on election day. And you may also go to any of the early voting sites that are open before election day. You do not have to choose.
What's the best way to find all those locations listed?
One of those is on our website at the election office. Another place that's a wealth of information is indianavoters.in.gov. Voters may go there, enter their name, their date of birth, and their county, and it will confirm that they're registered to vote, tell them everybody that's on their ballot, give them all the locations for early voting and for election day voting.
And that brought me up to, how do you know for sure if you're registered to vote?
That is one of the ways you
Check
can,
there.
is go to that website. You also may call the voter registration office, and they can look you up and let you know for sure that you are registered to vote and that you're eligible to vote in this election.
So if you've moved recently, and you haven't done anything like with the registration office, can you still vote where you were before, or what do you have to do as far as if you've moved?
That's one of those, it depends. If you were registered in the city and you still live in the city, but you've moved to a different street,
Okay.
you can still vote. Your ballot will be where you were registered, not where you've moved to. You can do that one time, and while you're there voting, you can also fill out a form that will change your address.
Okay.
So the next time you'll be registered at the correct place.
But city to county or vice versa, that's
Yeah.
kind of not.
Yeah.
What should people bring with them when they go to vote?
Indiana requires that you bring a government-issued photo ID either from the state of Indiana or from the federal government. Most people, that's going to be a driver's license, a state ID card, or passport, something like that. Like I said, it has to be either from the state of Indiana or from the federal government. And it needs to have an expiration date with some exceptions for veteran and military IDs that don't have expiration dates, but everything else needs to have your photo and it needs to have an expiration date on it.
So you don't have to go in with a stack of papers proving who you are.
No. Well, most people, like I said, most people, that's going to be a driver's license, an Indiana issued ID card.
So let's say you get into the voting booth and you get a little stumped and you need some help. Can you ask for help once you're in there, or are you on your own? How does that work?
Yes, if you need help, you'll have what are in our world called the judges. Those are the people that walk you up there and get you started. And if at some point you're saying, you know, I don't know what I'm doing, I need some help, what's this? You can say to the judges, hey, I need some help, and they'll come back over and assist you, either answering your question or if you actually need help voting, making the selections and things like that, they can help you with that. Now, they can't tell you who to vote for, but they can. But if you need somebody who can actually touch the things and do that, you can absolutely have the judges do that. If you know ahead of time that you're going to need some assistance, you may also bring someone with you if you're choosing, whether that be a spouse, a friend, a caretaker, something like that. There are two people who cannot do that, and one is your employer and the other is your union steward. Anybody else of your choosing can help you with that. And there's just a form that they have to fill out saying that they gave voter assistance.
So they can walk over with them while they're voting and help them.
Right.
Because they might need help reading the choices or something.
That's a common thing, is someone
Okay.
needs help reading.
Besides just their glasses, they can have some other assistance.
Yes.
So, okay. How many different types of voting machines are there in Indiana?
In Indiana, there's several different companies, but they basically all do about the same things. The two types that you're going to have is going to be what's called a DRE, a direct read, and those are the ones that store informations. There are also going to be ones that are going to be like the old scan things that we used to have back in school, to show my age, but where you fill in the little bubbles and then...
Like Scantron.
A Scantron, yes, you show your age too. But you fill in the bubbles and then the tabulator reads those. We have a little bit of a hybrid type system. If you vote an absentee ballot by mail, you're going to get one of those ones that you fill in the bubbles on. If you go to one of the in-person sites, you're going to make your selections on a machine. It's going to print out your ballot. That machine does not store any votes. It just is a ballot marking device. It prints out your ballot, and then your ballot is what is scanned to tabulate.
So then how is that tallied? It's put in the machine and then it's run through and scanned, I guess is what they're doing afterwards? Is that what you're saying?
If you vote before Election Day, if you vote early, that ballot is placed into an envelope sealed until Election Day, and then those are run through the machine. If you vote on Election Day, you take that ballot right to after it's
Sure.
been marked by the clerks, then you take it to the tabulator and it runs it through there.
Okay, got it. So now, they have the results so much quicker. I mean, that's one of the great things about the way we're voting now, in my
Yes.
opinion. Are there any new rules when it comes to voting in Indiana that people need to be aware of?
Nothing that's going to affect a voter. There's a few things behind the scenes that have
Sure.
changed a little bit, but as far as the voters, there's not any major changes that's going to affect them.
And then, is there any, I know you had mentioned going to the Indiana Voter .gov or whatever. Is there any place in particular for just Vanderburgh County, if they wanted to look up information?
Some of the information, but not all of the information, is going to be on the Vanderburgh County website under the election office.
So look up Vanderburgh County Election Office?
Yes.
Just Google that? and then
Just
it's gonna
Google
come
that and it will come up there. And it is going to have the things. It's not going to show you whether you're registered to vote. It's not going to show you who's on your ballot. It is going to show you the dates, times, locations for voting, and how to get an absentee ballot by mail and some things like that.
Are there any particular polling areas that you suggest or maybe have not as much activity that would be quicker to go through?
It's easier to go the other direction and tell you which ones are the most popular.
Okay.
The most popular by far, every election, is Washington Square
Yes,
Mall.
yes.
Every election. So if you're looking for some place that's not going to have a long line, it's probably not Washington Square Mall.
But if you want to go socialize, that's a place to
So
go.
if you want to go socialize, if you want to be in the thick of it, Washington Square Mall is your place.
All right.
Right down the street from Washington Square Mall is Kay's Elementary School, which is also a voting place and has very little activity.
Okay.
So if you want to be in a hurry and you're in that area, go over to Kay's and you'll get right in and right out.
All right, good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Good, thank you.
In case you haven't heard, in Kentucky, they're electing a governor this year. Joining us to talk more about what else they'll find on the ballot is Renisa Abner, Henderson County Clerk. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So that's a big race this year, it seems like. You can't turn on the TV without seeing something about it.
Yes, yes.
What kinds of things are on the ballot in Henderson?
We have state races mainly on our ballot in Henderson, and we have 2 local races to fulfill unexpired terms. So that's the Commonwealth of Kentucky and also the City Commission, 1 candidate, and they're both to fulfill unexpired terms.
So nothing congressional or Senate or anything
No,
like that?
no.
Okay. What can people expect when they arrive at the polls?
Well, in our county, we have 7 polling locations, and that means that any voter registered in Henderson can go to any one of those locations. They don't have to go to their particular precinct where they live, and they can vote at any one of the locations. They just need to provide a driver's license, and that is to make sure that they are who they say they are. We check them in on a poll pad device and make sure their address is correct. And after that's established, we give them a receipt that the poll pad prints out, and they take it to a ballot table. And this is new in Henderson. We have print-on-demand ballots. So we actually scan that receipt. They're provided at the check-in table, and then their ballot prints out, print-on-demand. So
Oh my
it's
gosh.
exciting.
Right. that
Yes.
is. So don't you think that's been so helpful as far going back to where they can vote wherever rather than in their precinct?
Yes, it's amazing. And I've had so many people, just express their gratitude because, say they live out in the county and, previously they would have had to, they work in the city and they would have had to drive all the way back home and vote in their, area that they live and then drive back to work. So now they can, literally go to any one of our locations and vote anywhere they like.
So what are the hours as far as voting? When does it start in
It's
Henderson?
6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
And then do you usually recommend, are there any particular polling places in Henderson County that you say you're going to expect a long line or where
Well,
it's...
our most popular voting location is the Archery Center, and that's on Garden Mile Road. And I think it's because whenever we first started this model of voting, it had to do with the pandemic. And, that was our first actual location where we started this. And I think people are the most familiar. And it is a large facility, and it accommodates a lot of people. So I think it's the most popular. But we have added a location this year, the Presbyterian Church in Henderson. And, we hope that takes maybe some of the traffic away from the Archery Center.
So let's say they get somewhere where there is a line. Is there a rule like as long as you're there by 6, you're still going to be able to vote? I mean, do you still keep it open?
Absolutely. As long as they are in line at 6 o'clock, we, the election officers, bring them inside the location and shut the door, and all of those people are allowed to vote as long as it takes.
Okay, good. So it's
Yeah.
not like they're going to drive by and think, oh my gosh, I can't
No.
get in.
And then also, too, we let people know, like if you go to a polling location and you see maybe there's a few more people than you wanted, to wait in line to get through. So you can go to any other location. We have those listed on the outside, so you will be able to pick another location.
Oh, okay, so
if
it's
you'd
right
like.
there. They get that.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what kind of turnout are you expecting this year?
Well, I hope it's a lot. I hope it's improved. We sometimes struggle with turnout in Henderson, and so I hope these local races improve our turnout. I don't ever give a number because I'm usually wrong, but I hope
crystal
people,
ball's not working.
Yes, I hope people do. Get out and vote and encourage their friends and family. I sent out postcards to every voter, registered voter, letting them know of all their options because we've never had this many options in election history in Kentucky.
Really?
So there are, it's the easiest time you've ever had to vote. We have the mail-in process, which yesterday was the deadline for the mail-in ballot absentee. Then today we started in-person absentee voting, and that runs for 6 days. And then we have early voting for 3 days. So, and then of course Election Day. So it's never been easier to vote, in all of our locations it's just a great time.
What do you attribute the decline in turnout to?
I don't know. I struggle with that because I don't know if it's apathy, voter apathy, or people are tired of maybe the issues they hear and the things on social media. I don't know what it is actually, and I struggle with that. I try to get out as much information as I can and as many outlets as we can use. But yeah, sometimes we do struggle with turnout.
Do you find that maybe it's a younger demographic that tends to not vote or a little more apathetic?
Yes. Usually the highest turnout of voters is the older generation. I don't know if it's the civic responsibility was more instilled in them, and we need to do a better job of encouraging our younger generation to take the responsibility seriously. But I think that's our job,
Right.
as adults in this generation to encourage the younger ones and let them know how important it is.
So if somebody's in there voting, maybe it's their first time, or maybe they're older and they're having some difficulty, or can they ask for help while they're at the poll?
Absolutely, yes. Someone who is having difficulty can actually, if they know they might need help, can bring someone with them if they're available. And there's just a form that you fill out, and they can assist them with, whether it's getting to the actual place to vote, helping them with their pen, several different things that they can help them with. Or if they don't have anyone, there's 2 people in our each polling location that can help them with that.
Okay.
And it's party, one from each party goes, 2 people go and help them and assist them.
So does the state of Kentucky have the same type of voting throughout the state, or
Yes.
is it by county, or?
As far as the equipment and the type of voting, yes, paper ballots. As far as the model, the polling location versus precinct, having every precinct open, that the law allows for each county their county board of elections to choose the method in which they want to administer the election. And so, and then those election plans have to be approved at the state level at the Secretary of State and also the State Board of Elections.
So are there any new rules this year that voters need to be aware of as far as voting?
No, nothing new. You know, other than, you know, our in Henderson, we are using print on demand. So, but nothing, no new laws.
Right.
No.
And you mentioned they can bring their driver's license, but could they bring some other form of ID
Yes.
if they don't have a driver's license?
Yes, they can bring a military ID, a college ID.
Just something with a picture?
Yes,
Okay.
but it's limited to those government-issued IDs without having to fill out a form.
Okay.
So it's less convenient if you use, you know, some other form of ID, like a Social Security card or, you know, even a debit card or credit card. You have to fill out a form.
Okay.
So, and that takes time. The easiest, and what most people do, is bring their driver's license.
Okay. Now,
Yes.
where could people find out some voting information for Henderson County and Kentucky in
Yes,
general?
govote.ky.gov, and that is a state website. And that list, you can check your voter registration to see if your address is correct, or you know, all the information as far as our polling locations can be found there. And also hendersonky.us, and that is the Henderson County Clerk's Office website. And we also have a Facebook page, Henderson County Clerk's Office.
So there's no excuse.
So, right, no excuse. And if you have, you know, if you've moved and your driver's license doesn't reflect your current address, that's okay. Come on and we
Okay.
will fix it that day. You know,
All right.
don't let that stop you. And even if it's expired, if you have an expired driver's license, that is still acceptable. We are trying to identify you. We might tell you, hey, it's
Okay.
expired.
Well,
but, you know, we will go ahead and let you vote. So
Well, that's good to know.
Don't let that
Hopefully-
stop you.
Hopefully you have a good turnout. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks again to all of our guests for talking about voting in the upcoming election. Thanks for watching WNIN Newsmakers.